Welcome to Round Rock, Texas for the USA Ultimate Division I College Championships. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald with Becky Thompson, where the 6th seed Western Washington is facing off against the 5th seed Tufts in the women's division of pool play. The 2019 USA Ultimate College Championships are presented by Spin Ultimate, providing Ultimate's best custom team uniforms and apparel since 1998. Visit Spin on the web at spinultimate.com. And we come to you right after the first pull, where Western Washington is in the white jerseys and Tufts is in the navy blue. Western Washington on offense, with Tufts in a zone look, but really cycling through the handlers, kind of breaking through the zone, approaching the red zone. See lots of fakes and a straight shot, and the toe was in. That is a score. Julia Downing, great footwork for that goal.
Just in bounds, you can see the observer signaling in there, and unfortunately for Tufts, she was completely left unmarked
So,
in the end zone.
yes, unmarked. They just left her right there, able to get that score right off the bat, and showing so much patience. Tufts really looking to try and force a turn in this first point of the game, but Western Washington is there.
Absolutely, and good to see a zone look coming out as well. We didn't see a lot of zone in the first game this morning, but there is a lot of wind down on this field, so maybe just a miscommunication there from Tufts in allowing Downing to get so open in the end zone. But overall, not a bad defensive look, just need a little extra communication there.
And that is a hold for Western Washington. They started on offense, so they will pull. We're in round 2 of pool play. Games today, tomorrow, into semifinals, and bracket play on Sunday, and the finals on Monday. And Western Washington coming out with a zone look of their own. Going over the top. That is caught. Margot Erheim, one of the stars of this Tufts team, was there. Now approaching the end zone, Meredith Bernstein, and one-handed catch to Claire Dunn. And Tufts answers right away.
Yeah, Tufts with a hold of their own right off the bat here, and Dunn does such a good job to reach behind her. This disc just a little bit behind where her cut was coming. You can see Tufts here looking patient, finds the cut, comes behind her, and just turns and grabs it, snags it out of the air.
And part of what the team's comments, they fill out a player survey coming into the tournament, and they said, Claire Dunn's speed and skills in the air make her the perfect downfield target. She will always come up with the disc. Even if it's a one-handed catch behind her, she's there. The player from the Netherlands making a big impact right away.
And it's so awesome to have a player like that you can always trust in the end zone. And I won't be surprised if we're saying her name plenty of times throughout this game. But right off the bat, we've got 2 downwind holds in this game. We saw in the second half of the last game between UCSB and Minnesota that all of the points were really scored in the downwind end zone. So we're going to have to see if a team is going to be able to punch a break in and maybe get a natural break with the wind as well.
So Margot Erheim to pull for Tufts. Erheim, a contributing player on the wild card club team out of Boston. Western Washington wasting no time to get the disc moving. Really changing the point of attack on the field. Just see how fast they move the disc in the handler space.
Yeah, no player is really wanting to hang on to it for longer than maybe 4 stalls maximum right now.
And going for the end zone, it bounces, but that's a goal. Maddie Gilbert with the reception.
Yeah, no surprise to see Gilbert in the end zone as well. She loves to strike deep, and they're happy to shoot it to her at any point. Credit to Western Washington. They stayed so patient through the handlers there, and only when they really saw an opportunity did they go. A little bit of luck there on Gilbert's side, just tapped it into her own hands.
And really great heads-up reception from Gilbert. And anytime it's a little bit breezy, anytime the disc is live, it is anybody's opportunity.
You can see the dancing there from Western Washington, just enjoying the moment so far as well. Looking like they're ready to take on whatever comes their way.
So we don't want to jinx it, but that is 3 consecutive points without a turnover. Do you think the streak can continue?
I mean, for these teams, they'll certainly hope that it can. We've talked about this before, but one, it's a great thing for confidence, but more importantly at this point, for fatigue. Keeping those points clean and quick as well is really going to help both of these teams.
And like you said, this downwind end zone, more forgiving so far than the upwind. So the pull lands and rolls. Immediately picked up by Tufts. Find the reset. And there is our first turnover of the game.
Unfortunately, just out of the hands of Bernstein there.
But sails overhead, and disc goes back to Tufts. We jinxed it, Becky.
We were a little excited about that.
So shoots into double coverage. So instead, Western Washington, Samia Ismail, player for Riot in the club season. But that throw, it's going the upwind direction. It's difficult.
Yeah, Ismail, a great handler, but we've talked about it a few times. That is the low side of the field, and those throws are going to get pushed out of the sideline.
So Tufts looking to convert up the sideline, one-handed catch. And it looks like the observer maybe didn't have a clear view, so he's bringing it to the players to make the call.
Yeah, the observer there just, I think, signaling that maybe the defender was just in his line of sight. Just as she went to catch the disc there, you can see there might have been some separation. And hard to see, but definitely close. So I think maybe the right decision in this situation to send it back to the thrower.
This is a rare occurrence where the observer is not in the right spot. But it was just, I mean, he's in perfect position. It just happened to be where it was. So another shot for Tufts in their end zone offense. And really out to space, but just not quite enough. So Sonia Morris puts that throw up. It's caught. And another sailing catch. That's caught too.
Yeah, Jocelyn somehow just waited for that disc to fall into her hands there.
But intercepted. We saw that spot on the field, inside out flicks, a struggle in the first round of play. Pick called on the field. And there's the throw that went up. And, you know, these teams throwing the huck, but that's actually a wise choice with the upwind, downwind. It's more of a field position game.
It's really a huck and pin decision. I think they're trying to get a chance to set their defense and put the pressure on while Western Washington has to go upwind.
So up the line, it's a floater, and through the pile. It almost looked like Wei 10 caught that with her face a little bit, but batted down at the last second.
Yeah, not a bad look from Ismail upfield there. It was a good throw in this wind, just sitting up with, which gives tons of time for the defender to track it down and make a play as well. Couple really floaty throws, a little bit dangerous there, just with so many people under the disc as well.
And Tufts looking for that release valve huck, but Western Washington is close by. So Ismail on the disc. Very clean break around. And oh, what a grab through the coverage. Really impressive work by Heberlein. So Western Washington looking for the first upwind point of the game, and they'll get it.
Yeah, the first upwind point and the first break there as well, Emmy, and they did it pretty patiently. There were a little bit of clogging there in the end zone, but they managed to wait till something did come open, and very smart decision to opt for that little dish pass, especially with the backhand in the wind, instead of trying to force something and get the wind to pick it up.
So really some athletic catches needing to be made by Western Washington. You can see 10 was a bobble, and she just braced the disc against the front of her face.
Just that cut to the near cone of the end zone, just scooped the defender a little bit to get that inside lane, and Western Washington took advantage, and could be a chance here for that natural break from the wind. They just got themselves an upwind break and a chance to extend their lead to 4-1 if they can take advantage. It'll be interesting to see what they do on defense. We've seen the zone look from them already, but since then we've seen both teams transition to more of a person look, so it would be interesting to see what Western Washington will call out of a timeout here, I believe, from Tufts.
So yes, Tufts did call the timeout, and you can see the coaching staff really keying in. Looked like some defensive positioning. JoJo Emerson, one of the coaches, and she was one of the Callahan nominee for Tufts in 2016. Really neat to see her giving back to the program.
Yeah, it's really cool to see the continuity with a lot of the college teams here, often seeing coaches coming back and even just alumni out here watching and partaking in the event too.
So there's Emerson, and we saw Becky Malinowski. She's just out of frame, another Brood Squad standout.
So I think, like you pointed out there, Emmys, just some defensive adjustments here for Tufts, trying to find their groove. I think at the start of this game, they can get a quick, or an easy, not even quick, but an easy offensive point here. That would be a big advantage to get their defense back out on the field and ready to go as well. I think just needing to tighten up on a few of those marks, some easier throws coming off, but again, for Western Washington, when you have the likes of Ismail on the disc, she almost has the choice of her throw anyways.
And she had, Ismail had 3 or 4 turnovers in that last point, but in this kind of wind, you have to take some shots a little bit. So Tufts catching that pull that was coming in hot. Western Washington in the zone, running through is Tova Breen, and another break chance right into space. Breen, so close, off of the fingertips. Thought she might get the bookends there.
A huge layout attempt there. You always want to see the player go for double happiness, and unfortunately it was just out of her fingertips, but phenomenal pressure on defense here from Western Washington.
So really nice up the line blade, but Western Washington is there. Gilbert on that block. And shooting for the end zone, straight into the hands of Jenna Komavangsa.
And another break here for Western Washington, this time doing it a little bit faster than the last time, just putting that pressure on defense, and Tufts unfortunately didn't have any options, had to put it up line, tried I think to get it as far as possible up the field, but Western Washington just taking advantage, and they extend their lead here to 4-1.
And feel a little bit of breeze coming through, but it looks like the wind is really blowing off a lot of the cloud cover that we had early this morning, and a little bit of sprinkles too, which actually is great that that's getting blown off. Earlier in the week, it seemed like it was going to be thunderstorms the entire tournament, and so far it's 80 degrees. I think it's a high of 86. It's humid, but it could be so much worse. Very pleasant right now.
Absolutely, and you never want those weather delays to come into play in a tournament like this, because they can be such a game changer for teams, can absolutely change momentum, and can cause problems with injuries as well, having to wait for long periods of time and warm up, possibly 2, 3, 4 times before, so hopefully we won't be seeing any of those this weekend.
So that pull cuts through a lot of the wind, lands in, rolls out, so checked in with a 4-person cup. So Tufts just shoots over the top, but Ismail blocks that down straight to the ground.
Samia Ismail is just dominant in that space, and anytime a disc is going to come up 50-50, it's going to be hers.
Lindsay strikes, looks for that strike cut, the line to Heberlein, and another blade straight to Downing. We'll reset it to Ismail. And straight shot slices through. It's another break as Western Washington is going on a run in this first half.
And Western Washington showing that they're not afraid of the upwind as well, going for that big around blade, working it up that sideline multiple times, but credit to the rest of their team. They were clearing the space really effectively on that point and allowing room for the offender to attack the disc on that sideline, not drawing too many defenders in, and that allowed them then to have a wide open cut over on the break side. And you can see this great inside out shot here as Morris, just no hesitation, puts it in for the goal.
And Western Washington, in their first 5 points of play, have each gone to 5 different people for the score. What does that really say about the depth of this team?
I mean, we've talked about the likes of Ismail and Gilbert, but they cannot do it without a team that is full of stars, really. They're a team who have peaked at the right time in the season. They did a great job winning their region, and now coming into this and showing us exactly why they are the top team out of the Northwest and the number 6 seed in this tournament.
So now with the breaks that have been registered, Tufts will be working upwind for their offensive hold. Handler swings right off the bat. Western Washington in the zone look. It's a bit of a wall sag for the handlers, kind of forcing these types of shots, and batted down. Straight through. Way 10 gets that goal.
Western Washington are making it look pretty easy right now, and you've got to give that credit to their defense here. Really forcing Tufts to have to take any kind of shot to get the disc out of their hands. The stall count was climbing there, and with the wind, the disc just floating up into space. And Western Washington Washington as well, not afraid of the quick transition. They took advantage right away. That disc was coming in pretty hot to 10, hangs on pretty easily, and it's 6-1 here in this first round game for these two teams. It's the first round of the day for them, and right now not showing any signs of those first game of national jitters from this Western Washington team.
And the depth just continues on with 6 different people involved. For 6 different people for a goal, but 10 different people involved in total as these points have gone through.
That absolutely has to be the building blocks for a great team. I mean, any team can rely on a few stars, but to really go into the deep stages of this tournament, having the ability to get everybody involved on the field is what makes a great team.
And be sure to use the hashtags, hashtag USAU D1 Champs and hashtags Legacies start here. And so many of those legacies started by our Live Ultimate ambassadors. We have 4 that are here this weekend: Trent Dillon, Jimmy Mickle, Carolyn Normile, Jesse Schaffner. And these 4 ambassadors are leading a Learn to Play clinic Saturday morning here at the Round Rock Multipurpose Complex, 9 to 11. Clearly, so many of these players have positively benefited from playing in Youth Ultimate. So it's really cool when these big tournaments come to town, and anybody in Texas, Austin is in the central part of Texas, so just drive on out to the Learn to Play clinic tomorrow morning. Tufts trying to get that hold right on the goal line. Instead, Ismail picks up for Western Washington, and a little bit of a bobble.
Needed to get themselves a little momentum, and this could be the start.
Just really great heads up offense in that transition period from Tufts, and just like you said, just give them that little bit of momentum boost to keep Western Washington too from getting closer to halftime, as they just sort of went on that break spree.
I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about Ultimate, is that it really can be a game of runs and a game of emotions as well. And we saw early in the first half, Western Washington got that upwind point, and it just gave them that momentum and that fire to go on a run. So maybe all Tufts needs now is to do the exact same thing back, and we could be tied up not long from now.
So the offensive scoring possession, I guess, the offensive possession end zone is now downwind. That pull, though, will sail out. And Becky, what's the benefit? This might seem like an obvious question, but what's the benefit of the pull landing inbounds? Even if it's not as far, what's the inbounds versus landing out of bounds?
I mean, right now you're seeing Western Washington getting to center that disc to the middle of the field and get to set up their offense as well. If Tufts can get that pull inbounds, it allows them to come down on defense and really falter that first pass.
So slicing through, finding an opening. That was Vale Dark who caught that goal.
And that's a great example of the pull going out of bounds to the advantage here of Western Washington. They were able to set up their offense, run a pretty effective cut from the horizontal flow there, and they find Gilbert just outside of the end zone. She was isolated in space on this near side of the field and had a wide open receiver there. Easy backhand break for the goal. Western Washington, you know, we talk about Tufts wanting to grind it out and fight, but they are clearly not going anywhere.
So a lot of enthusiasm in the huddle. Western Washington one away from taking it to half. And we will have so much coverage all throughout the weekend. And to check all of that out, be sure that you visit the College Championships website, collegechampionships.usaultimate.org. There you can find more info on the teams playing in each division, game schedules, broadcast schedules, history of the tournament. daily recaps, photo highlights, tournament results, news articles, and updates. You can find pretty much everything you need to know about this tournament on that website. So Western Washington in the zone. Floats, but it's caught. Tufts working it in tight spaces. Looking to go around. Thought perhaps that might come back in, but not quite.
Unfortunately for Tufts, that was really the only option that they had. The zone there from Western Washington was absolutely stifling and took away all of those downfield options, and it's going to allow Washington here to walk it up almost to halfway.
And a foot block from Tufts. Jordan Bricknell, that great mark, and a blade over the top. It was the right idea to get it to Bricknell, but that's a tough read.
That's a tough read, and unfortunately, Bricknell wasn't actually really ready for it either. I don't think she knew that that kind of throw was coming her way. Hard to predict, hard to read, and unfortunately it didn't quite work out, but I like the idea.
Ismail catches it, immediately looks for the next, and Tufts is there, keeping the possession alive. And, oh, it looked like it was a little bit of a miss throw from Weintraub. And another miss throw.
Looks like we'll see Western Washington set up their zone look again, see if they can shut the disc down close to the end zone, which could really help with taking it to half on this upwind point for them.
So this is downwind, so it does make sense that Tufts looked for that huck, one-on-one in the end zone. Instead, they'll reset, and a pick called. Oh, a foul called.
Yeah, I think Ismail there maybe just calling a little bit of a push-off from the cut. Looks like they're going to have a quick discussion. It's a good matchup between those two players. You could see both of them fighting for the space, so not hard to imagine why there might have been a little bit of contact and a discussion now.
So checked in right on the goal line. Yeah, I love that Irheim-Ismail matchup.
And unfortunately on that one, I think Ismail maybe getting in the head of Irheim a little bit as she had to dance to try to get open. And anytime your cutters are dancing in that situation, it is so hard to time that throw right, and just a miscue giving the disc back here to Western Washington.
So throw up the line, and miraculously bounces right into the receiver's hands.
Western Washington have created most of these opportunities, but you have to say a little bit of luck has also been on their side.
That was not lucky. And so it's turnover. Going back to Tufts. It's floating and right off of the bat. Another one-on-one in the end zone, but that's just so risky. I think looking for the reset was wise. Weintraub throws it to Irheim and bounces off of her hands. I don't think she was expecting it that early, maybe.
Yeah, and it did look like Ismail there was calling a pick as well, so the disc would have had to go back, which I think is why she was so open. Not surprise, or a little surprising to see Ismail not right on her hip there, but Western Washington now disc back in their hands, calling a timeout, and this is one of the longer points we've had in a while as Western Washington is still trying to close it out to take half.
And you can really see then the fight from Tufts to keep them from taking half. and the momentum that could be there. We've had so many back and forths. I think we've had a foot block, a few pick calls, some interesting hospital passes.
It's been an interesting game, even with the scoreline. I think we've seen Tufts do lots of really great things, especially defensively. They've put a lot of pressure on Western Washington. Unfortunately, for offense, Western Washington has been the better team in this first half. Not able right now to work it upwind, and they're trapped right in the corner of their right at the corner of the end zone on that low side of the field as well. So the wind really going to play a factor here, as we'll see even their cutters are going to set up pretty close to the disc, and I won't be surprised to see some really tight, fiery defense here from Tufts.
So on the mark from Tufts is Claire Dunn. On the disc is Eleanor Heberlein. There's a poach in the lane from Tufts as well. Now Ismail with the disc. I think a little bit of contact that eventually stop play. It doesn't have to stop play.
Yeah, players not always using that contact call, sometimes still calling the foul, but you can call contact, reset the stall count, and not lose your momentum in the cutting lanes.
It's floating! Ismail, one hand is all that was necessary for her to get that block. You can see some poaching. It looks like a zone and one from Tufts. The and one on Ismail, of course. Floats up. And really great closing speed from Volker, but has just off of the fingertips. And slices through. Tufts is able to survive the point. Margot Erheim gets the goal. What a doozy.
Bit of a wild point there, a lot of turnovers, a lot of miscues as well, and it took several attempts here for Tufts to get the right shot in the end zone. Erheim, I think about the third or fourth time now that she's made that same cut, and finally it works out for them. But both teams looking a little bit shaky on that point.
And I think part of the reason for the length of that point is that Tufts was really recognizing the downwind space. So they just would immediately throw a huck every single time. And it is for field position. It ended up benefiting them in the end. But you've got to get ready to grind when that happens.
And they've shown that they can absolutely do that. And right now they have an opportunity to get an upwind point here, an upwind break that could totally change the storyline of this game right now. So far it has been all about Western Washington, but that one upwind point, we haven't seen Tufts score in that end zone yet, could really shift how we're talking about this game. And I think we might start to see a little bit more connection from them, a little bit more energy. When we talk about their defense, it is so impressive to watch how tight they are. Just needing to maybe watch a few of those deep shots. We've seen Ismail be able to take that shot time and time again, so maybe just going a little bit flatter on the mark and making it a bit harder on her.
So Morris picks up for Western Washington. Now Breen with the disc. Western Washington scores here. They'll take half. And looks for that high release flick over the top. And just continues up line. Riley Tower was making the cut, but that is difficult in the downwind. And people don't realize how difficult it is to throw downwind also.
It takes a lot of precision and a lot of care for the disc as well. You really have to put it up very, very lightly, but have it perfectly placed. Anything less is going to cause the disc to keep sailing like it just did.
Speaking of sailing, So Western Washington will take it in about, I would say, 25 yards outside the end zone. And slices through. And that is another casualty of the downwind throw.
Yeah, that one looked a little bit like they had run out of options as well, so kind of forcing the throw. But like you said, that wind is just going to carry it straight out the back of the end zone. And it's a little bit unfortunate for your players right now. Both of these teams are having to work harder and harder on these long points as it gets hotter here throughout the day. That is really going to be something they want to focus in on and make the points faster.
So a quick pass is intercepted. Swings around. 10 with the disc to Cassidy. And she keeps her feet in bounds. That's a goal. Maddie Gilbert gets the score.
I think that's the third point already for Gilbert in this game. She's been so quick in the end zone, and that's a phenomenal throw there from Western Washington, just spreading and using the entire width of the field. Credit to Gilbert for keeping her feet just in bounds there, and a great job to them. They finally close it out to take half.
So Western Washington is up 8 over Tufts 3. We will take a quick break, but we'll have more talking and possibly a fun surprise for you at halftime. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald with Becky Thompson. Stay tuned. to second half. Welcome to USA Ultimate at the half, where we have Live Ultimate Ambassador Jessie Schaffner with us. Thanks, Jessie, for
Thank you for
joining
having
us.
me.
And of course, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald with Becky Thompson. Currently, Western Washington leading Tufts 8-3.
Yeah, pretty commanding first half here from Western Washington. And Jesse, what do you think has been one of the biggest factors in giving them this lead?
I'd say that Alyssa Weatherford's coaching has been really apparent. She herself as a player is a vet of being really successful in windy conditions like this, and she's clearly implementing these strategies distinctly with those upwind and downwind lines. And those players, as they're playing, you can see that they know exactly what their job is. And so they're going out there and following those orders. Like Samia is shooting, and then the 6 people on the field with her are fearlessly attacking those discs, and as the numbers play out, they're coming down with a lot of those gritty passes to bank things like that 2-1 early in the game, the upwind break that they just were grinding out. And then the real question is, can you bank the next one? And they banked that next one, cashed it in, and won. And that's the crux of the game. And I think a lot of that is due, of course, to the players, but to Alyssa Weatherford's coaching, and you can hear her implementing that stuff from the sideline.
And Jesse, you've been kind of roaming the grounds here in Round Rock this morning. What are some adjustments that you hope you see all the teams make?
Oh, yeah. So one big one that I've seen across the board in both divisions as this morning has people waking up. I'd love to see the pulling technique improve. People are kind of in this in-between phase of not deciding to fully commit to the roller or to try to ride the wind high in the air and get to float to stay in bounds. And it's in this in-between stage, and people are not getting anything out of it. Things are getting us, defenses are setting around half field, and I would love to see them really commit to driving that disc with the power going, striking forward into the ground.
Using what they're given instead of taking away from it. Well, the second half is just about underway. Jesse, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Looking forward to the second half.
And we'll be right back in our positions just after this.
When I saw her to wrap up, I was like, I don't know how to finish.
No, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And the second half is now underway. Tufts with the disc on offense. Looking to spread out the field as Western Washington is in the zone look. And overthrow from Tufts. So another break opportunity for Western Washington to start the second half.
We've seen Western Washington be able to go upwind pretty effectively. We just talked about it with our Live Ultimate Ambassador, Jessie Schaffner, at halftime as well. Coach Alyssa Weatherford definitely helping her team work through these windy conditions. And right now, a chance to get an upwind break out of half. This could be a huge momentum turn. I mean, they've already been in control, but to answer out of half like this, fortunately not going to happen right away, but a good start.
So a pick is called right off the bat from the possession change. So some discussion, and the call goes to the observer, and it's overruled. So the disc will go back to Erheim. And we saw it at the end of the second half, Tufts really playing that positional game, taking those downwind hucks Becky, do you think that they'll employ that here?
Yeah, I think absolutely at this point. They're running low on options. You can see the way Western Washington is shutting down so many of those cutting options, and at some point, they do need to reset the disc.
Don't see a lot of cuts going deep, so Tufts throws the reset, and that's incomplete. Just beautiful throwing form from Ismail. Miscommunication, though. And Erheim just eats that up. Big throw over the top, and it was just in between two receivers.
Yeah, it looked like both receivers there weren't necessarily sure who was meant to be catching that disc.
And a pick called. It bobbles but stays in bounds. But the next bobble is incomplete. So sweeping shot over the top, isolated in the end zone. That is a score for Tufts. Giles with the goal.
Amanda Giles doing a great job of finding herself in some separation there near the end zone. You can see she set up that cut and timed it perfectly, and credit to Tufts, that throw, hard to do. We talked about the downwind as well. Had to put a lot of care and love on the disc, and they executed it very well.
So Tufts with the first point of the second half. Maintaining that composure and taking advantage of the downwind.
You can see Coach Becky Malinowski out there talking to her team. I think setting some matchups, looks like, for the defensive end here. They haven't been able to score in that upwind end zone yet, and they haven't been able to generate a break from this Western Washington team. 4 holds to their name. They're only 4 points down, so at this point in the game, so much time remaining. One break could be all they need to go on a run of their own.
Just as we saw from Western Washington in the first half, they just knocked them off one after the next. So the pull stays in bounds. Shoots over the top. So here's that break opportunity you just talked about, Becky. And just not reading the disc all the way in. But they get another chance. You don't always get so lucky against a talented team like Western Washington. And it floats, and there's the grab. Tufts is there. They get their first break of the game.
And in the upwind end zone as well.
And so now their deficit is still 3, but that was a huge point.
See, Maddie Gilbert on defense went up a little bit earlier there. And then Pasalacqua just rips it out of the air. And Tufts, absolutely phenomenal moment to score this point, because with 50 minutes to go, they've gotten their upwind break. They've got a chance to go downwind and close the gap to 2 points and maybe do the same thing Western Washington did in the first half and rail off several in a row.
That was Rosanna Vitello who threw that floating grab. But talk about having the trust of your teammates then too, that Pasalacqua just jumped at the very right time. So do you think that Tufts will come down in a zone look, a zone and one look, or a person matchup?
I think at this point, Tufts' person defense has been so effective for them. They've really caused the pressure. We saw it on the last point, Western Washington making a few execution mistakes, but it looks like they're doing a bit of a junk zone with lots of poaches in the lanes and a mark chasing the disc here.
And the pull was almost dropped, but Ismail was great. And that just goes through the hands. So another break opportunity for Tufts. Erheim on the disc. Slices through, but goes straight to dark. Tufts keeping it close. But so much composure from Western Washington in the backfield. That shoots over the top. It's there for Jocelyn. And a blade is batted down. So another break chance for Tufts. And a lot of, looked like a lot of angle that might come back in, but just not quite enough angle on that disc.
And unfortunate on the execution there, although I do think that was the right decision. Had the open cutter and Claire Dunn streaking to the end zone, and maybe just the wrong edge on the disc. The wind is a little bit swirly, so maybe changing it up a little bit, but it's a gift here to Western Washington at half field.
So some quick movement, just really every other to Ismail. Slicing through, finding open coverage. And Western Washington showing some patience in the red zone.
And what a way this would be to respond to the upwind break that Tufts just scored on them, to go straight back the other way with an offensive hold in that upwind end zone.
And we've just been notified that there is a level 1 heat advisory on as Western Washington gets that goal for their 9th point. So there will be a 3-minute break when the first team reaches 12 or at soft cap, whichever comes first.
I think the teams will be happy to know that that has come into effect at this point. It is hot out here and it's really humid. We've talked about that even with the wind. It's not really giving too much relief to these players who are really battling it out in these long points too.
The local temperature is 82 degrees, so it has increased. Feels like 87 degrees with the humidity at a whopping 68%. But 0 chance of rain.
And that is really great news. We can't complain about that.
But for now, let's talk about Western Washington maintaining their composure when Tufts was so close to a couple break opportunity, 2 breaks in a row.
Yeah, I think that speaks to Western Washington's depth. We've talked about it a couple times now in this game, but Tufts had the disc essentially on the end zone line to get that second break, get that downwind point as well, and unfortunately turn it over, but Western Washington able to work it through multiple different people on the field to go the full 70 yards, grind it out, and get themselves into the upwind end zone. It was a hold, but it was an incredibly important hold.
So 9-5, Western Washington ahead of Tufts in this pool play game. 20 teams from across the country qualify in either division. at this beautiful complex in Round Rock, north of Austin. And Tufts has been here before. They made the trip to Centex, which is the tournament that I don't believe it was at this field location, but it was in the Austin area. And they finished third there with an 8-7 win over Ohio State.
Yeah, they had an incredible tournament at Centex with quite a few wins over nationals, teams who are at nationals here as well. And the ones that they didn't win, they got a few close games and close points as well.
So Tufts on offense. They were trying not to hold on to the disc for too long as Western Washington is in their zone look. Looks like a bit of a wall in the handler with a handler sag, and usually that means that the offside or off the mark, I guess, defenders in the cup are really trying to prevent up the field throws like we just saw with that block.
Well, trying to prevent it, they're also really baiting the thrower as well to throw that and get the poach block.
So on the turn, there's a foul call. And a little bit of discussion on the field. So Western Washington will keep the disc. We're looking for the reset. That dish is tipped, and on probably the third or fourth attempt is caught. Next throw is good. And continues through. Fighting forward is Maddie Gilbert.
A little bit behind where she was making that cut, and she readjusted perfectly to attack the space. And Western Washington, again, in control. Unfortunate for Tufts, who got that upwind break, but Western Washington not too phased by it at all here.
And they received several, or converted several breaks of their own in the first half that just gives that cushion, too, in case you do get broken.
Yeah, and now here getting their first break of the second half, and it's hard to imagine how they won't continue this momentum at this point in the game. They look like they figured out a few of those kinks that maybe were plaguing them at the start of the second half, and they're really working it through their entire team. But you got to give shout outs to people like Maddie Gilbert, who have absolutely dominated in the end zone today.
And for Gilbert, that was her third goal with that reception. And somebody that Western Washington really looks to make a difference on the field, and she is showing up today.
Yeah, and it's not hard to see why as well. She was on the U24 women's team in Perth, Australia last year as well, winning the gold medal, and she's shown exactly why she is such a talented player. As it looks like that pole is going to sail just out of bounds once again, although a little bit further outfield than we've seen in some of the other ones.
So it will be checked in center field. Tufts in a vertical stack. And you can see Western Washington bracketing because they figure somebody is going deep. But instead it's a flood over to the break side, or to the force. There was a flood to the force side, but incomplete. And that sails overhead is pretty easily caught by Komavangsa. And even though that around break wasn't completed, it's just still just incredible form. Ismail gets the disc back. And despite a good bid, the disc is still moving on, completed by Western Washington. Just marching it up the field. And putting that to space, running right onto it. I believe that's Jenna Komavangsa.
And Komavangsa really had a phenomenal point there. She went every other pass through the middle part of the field, able to snag a couple throws that floated a little bit in her favor there, but also the incredible job that she did in terms of clearing herself all the way to the back of the stack. She got out of the handling spot, got out of the lanes, went to the back of the stack, and that left her wide open for Ismail to put out a perfect throw into space for her to attack in the back of the end zone.
So you can see why Ismail is just such a dominant factor for Western Washington. And a timeout has been called. I believe it was by Western Washington.
I think at this point Western Washington know what they've been able to accomplish so far in this game. They've just railed off 3 unanswered points after Tufts just broke them as well. So you got to feel a little bad for Tufts, but I think Western Washington are just showing why they are the number 6 seed in this tournament, why they won the Northwest region, and they're playing extremely well.
And for Ismail, in that point, she had a D, a turn, and an assist. So finally some statistical recognition, because up until that point, she's mostly held them in the middle of the field, getting it upfield, but then might be the hockey assist or the pass right before that. But that's why there's so many storylines that's what I love, that stats don't tell the full story. The score doesn't always tell the full story, but man, what a difference these players make.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And somebody like Ismail, we've talked about this with other players as well. She brings up the whole level of the team, not just with what she does on the disc, but what she does off the disc. You can see her communicating to her teammates and directing traffic as well. And I think that just gives everybody confidence that they know somebody is leading them all the way.
Incidentally, she's also a bioanthropology, education, social justice, biology major, but education, social justice, and chemistry minor.
It's a really interesting combination.
I know. I want to interview her about the intersection of that and where her interests lie for the future. So at the end of the timeout, Western Washington pulling to Tufts. It's caught by Vitello, but not so fast.
It was interesting. It looked like Tufts was really the one who called the offside on Western Washington, signaling to the observer, but it didn't appear that either of the observers signaled for it right away.
Just interesting. So with offsides, it gets your punishment gets progressively worse the more times you do it. First is a warning, and then it's subsequent yardage penalties that could be as bad as reverse brick, which just essentially gives it to the other team in their red zone. So some give and goes from Tufts as they have the defenders take their positions. And I think it's a forced middle. What was it? Kind of cheeky, fun throw. So on this near sideline, Erheim. And Tufts marching it up the field, but sails overhead, but still caught. I think Erheim was the initial intended receiver, and that is an upwind goal. Score by Claire Dunn.
Not surprised to see Dunn in the end zone again, but Tufts working it so cleanly and efficiently up the field in the wind as well, and either just getting used to the wind or having made some critical adjustments. Either way, it's working out for them here, and that's an incredible point to get. I mean, time on their side still in this game. We've talked about going on runs before. They didn't manage to do it the first time they got that upwind point, but maybe they can do it this time.
So Tufts with a little bit of wind in their sails. That was the third assist for Erheim. Not surprising, throwing to her wild card teammate, Dunn, for the goal.
Yeah, definitely seen a lot of chemistry from these players who play together all through the college season and through the club season as well, playing together essentially all year round at that point.
Fun fact, Erheim played with wild card, and then Dunn, she played with wild card for the series, but at the World Ultimate Club Championships, she was playing with Groot out of the Netherlands. So it was so fun to see, okay, they're opponents on the international stage, but then they'll be club and college teammates once that's finished.
I think that speaks to their chemistry as well, because sometimes you really get to know a player by playing against them and know the kinds of cuts that they like to make, and that can really help you as a thrower for making the right decisions into their hands.
So Western Washington working it upwind. And like we've said all day, really working through Samia, but a bobble. And it's, I think, a little bit of confusion who's going to pick up the disc, so a little tangled up there. So Tufts inside of half field and just bounced. There was a big wind gust right there, so you could see that the path of the disc just changed right at the last second. Beautiful inside throw, but I'm not sure Adams was expecting it. So shooting for the end zone. Getting a little crazy out there.
Yeah, both of these offenses are breaking down just a little bit. I think, like you mentioned, a big gust of wind. The wind has seriously increased on this point, but also a few miscommunications and execution errors as well.
So Western Washington looking for the cutter separation. They find that. Heberlein back to Ismail. And floating overhead, but really nice. Komavangsa going behind her, but the next pass incomplete. And we're just kind of staying right in this section of the field for the past 3 or 4 possessions.
Yeah, we haven't really left this third of the field, neither team able to really generate anything on their offense.
So that backhand continuation, reset to the center of the field. And pick called. You can see a lot more hand motions that have trickled into the domestic play. It's very common on the international stage. But I have to say, selfishly as a commentator, I love it. It's so much easier to see what's happening from afar. How about that run through block?
Yeah, Adams just reading that one all the way. She had her receiver there in her pocket the whole time.
Ismail with those scary break side throws. And just popping up. So we've managed to get a little bit closer to half field, but still about that same distance away from the end zone. Floating into space. Tufts doing a good job of clearing, and they find an opening. Sam Schmidt catches that score.
And credit to Tufts there for finally working it all the way over to that far side of the field, and the timing of the cut from the stack, working it exactly off when the disc was into the hands here with the handler. They swing it all the way into the end zone, and beautifully done. Tufts have shown these wonderful moments of execution, especially near the end zone, but unfortunately overall for these teams, a little bit shakier, not the prettiest of points, but they must be happy that it's over.
So another point for Tufts, just quietly chipping away at the lead. So it has to energize them, and even if throws are incomplete, you did see Tufts maintaining that discipline in their end zone set.
Yeah, both teams have done, I think, a much better job when they've been in that end zone set, maybe just being aware of their system or being more in tune with their system when it comes close to their end zone. We've seen, at least in the later stages of this game, both teams look a little bit shaky through the middle of the field and have a hard time working it through off their own end zone line, but of course the wind still playing a factor. We can't talk about that enough. I mean, it is a factor here, and the teams who are going to be able to grind out some of these longer points are the teams we're going to see in the later stages of the tournament.
So pull lands about midfield. Western Washington in a sagging zone. A throw over the top. Incomplete.
Not surprised to see them looking for Gilbert in the back of the end zone there. Unfortunately, just the throw being carried out of bounds, but two open receivers there for Western Washington. The defense wasn't in sight.
And I did like that at least it wasn't a straight shot to the end zone. There was a lot of curve on the disc. And a blade. Maddie Gilbert is there. Push that down. Now Western Washington, their chance in the red zone. Showcase their end zone offensive prowess. Foul called.
Looks like Dunn just was reading that all the way as she stepped across. But maybe some contact. Ruby Cassidy saying that hard to tell on that replay.
The way the rules are structured, most of the time it is a foul on the mark.
Yeah, it did look like on that second replay there, it's going to be contested, but it did look like Cassidy tried to step through the mark in order to get that break throw, and Dunn was just putting on a lot of pressure, so maybe a little contact.
And there's the shot to Gilbert. That's 12 points for Western Washington.
And Gilbert doing again what she does best and just attacking the disc as well. The defender was in that space, but they're not too worried about it. Happy to let her just run onto the disc and make it her own.
So right now on the field, they're taking a 3-minute break, but we want to take a look at one of the really mainstays of the Western Washington offense, Samia Ismail. We've just seen so much wonderful play from her so far today.
Yeah, we've talked about the depth of this team, but they honestly, I think at this point, can't have done what they've fully achieved here without the likes of Samia Ismail here. You can see how she just attacks that deep space and really owns the vertical here, getting countless Ds as well as being dominant on offense.
And it's so deadly to have someone who can play in the deep like she is, but then you're also a handler as well. So you can catch that interception and shooters gotta shoot.
Yeah, most of the time when the disc is in Ismail's hands, you would not know that it is windy as it is.
So as a reminder, we are in a level 1 heat advisory, so we're part of a 3-minute break, and it was to whenever the first team got to 12 or hard cap, whichever came first. Western Washington stayed at 11 because Tufts scored a couple points in a row, but we are in the heat timeout. So that is a good time to talk a little bit about these college championships. So the first one was held in Somerville, Massachusetts, and if I'm not mistaken, that is where Tufts is located.
Yeah, that's exactly where they're from, and so some rich history possibly coming out of that region, and we know Massachusetts has an incredible amount of ultimate being played there as well, so maybe just building even from that.
And so that was held in 1984, way before these players were born, certainly. And the women's division was added a mere 3 years later in 1987. And the tournament has grown to hundreds of teams across the country. 40 total teams qualify for nationals, and we say it's nationals, but it is really North American.
Yeah, we do get a few teams down from Canada playing in the USA Ultimate Series. This time only one Canadian team qualified, the University of Victoria in the men's division. They're coming in for their second ever appearance at nationals, which is really great to see. But you're right, really a whole kind of North American feel and really a great event for all of these teams.
And teams from Mexico are able to participate as well as part of the South Texas section. Texas is so big that their sectional is divided into two. They have North Texas and South Texas sectional. That's not the case in the club division, but it is the case in the college division. So very interesting from that perspective. The defending national champions are both here. So women's national champion
Dartmouth has won the last 2 years in a row. They're here looking for that lucrative three-peat as well. They haven't had the strongest regular season, but they're a team with stars like Jack Verjou, Claire Trope, and Caitlin Lee, who are really going to shake some things up this weekend.
And in the men's division, the reigning national champion is University of North Carolina. There are two new teams in the men's division, Iowa State and Northeastern. Northeastern, another team from the Boston area. There's just a lot of good ultimate in Massachusetts.
A lot of great ultimate, and Tufts, obviously a program that's rich with ultimate history and looking to find a way back into this game. Unfortunately, we're about 20 minutes from hard cap. I think soft cap has gone, so Western Washington in absolute control as the pull will go up here.
So the pole lands center field, gives time for Western Washington to set up. Tufts with the handler movement and really good fakes despite the zone look from Western Washington. So short passes through and looking for the full width of the field, which is very successful when you're running a zone or when you're playing against a zone. You're running your zone offense.
Yeah, you really want to make that zone defense move across the field and tire them out so that you can find that opportunity through.
And Ismail was right there, but a foul is called.
like Erheim saying that there was enough contact made that she had to play on the disc.
So the foul call will stand from the observer ruling. And Western Washington has moved into a person matchup from the defensive side. Now just right on the goal line. And goes. That strike cut is in the end zone. Score for Tufts.
Yeah, good patience there from Tufts as Julia Lober just worked her way through her defender, took her time to build that cut, but took her time to find the right cut. There was a little bit of clogging happening on that near side of the end zone. Erheim hadn't cleared out of that space, but Lober did a great job to find the little bit of space in the near corner of the end zone and get the point here for Tufts.
So in the first half, Western Washington went on a 4-break run, plus they had a hold before and after. You can never say what ifs, but you take away that break train, it's a significantly different game.
A completely different game. I mean, Western Washington has 2 breaks in the second half, but Tufts has 1 as well. So really only a 2-1 game in the second half. And you gotta wonder, when you start a first half of your first game at Nationals, sometimes maybe just not getting their systems flowing, not making the right decisions, and I'm sure they'll know that if they could go back and maybe play it a little bit differently, a little bit tighter on defense, that it could be a different story.
So Western Washington will receive the pull. And the pull going out of bounds. I think it did land out. You know, and one element to note is for the pull, the thrower can release the throw from anywhere on the goal line. It does not have to be at the center of the field, and there's some advantages to adjusting your positioning.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of these players on both teams releasing it from either the far side of the field or the middle, and the wind is really pushing it out of bounds. It'd be great to see some of the players adjust, come to this near corner of the end zone to put that pull up, and at least then the pull, even if the wind catches it, has a higher chance of landing in bounds.
So the wind so significant that even the short passes to get it to the middle of the field were difficult. The observer walked it to the thrower. They checked it in. High release over the top. And you really saw, I believe, that was Vale Dark putting on the Jets, but just a little too much juice.
Yeah, Cassidy really wanted to take that shot. You could see she was excited about the chance to throw that high release, but unfortunately the wind catching it again here, but a great idea, really just unfortunate on the execution.
So a zone look from Western Washington. Tufts slicing through. And it's so, there was not a foul called. I might have called a foul, but it is a self-officiated game, and it goes out the back.
Yeah, it did look like there was some contact there. I have to agree with you, Emmy. So interesting that there was no call made, but we are running out of time in this game, so maybe just not sure of themselves enough, or, you know, we talked about this in the last game as well. Sometimes it's the right thing to just take a minute to think about it, and if you're wrong or you're not sure, you can retract that call, but sometimes you regret it later if you don't take that second.
So Tufts working in Western Washington's scoring end zone. And layout from Gilbert. So now Western Washington on the goal line.
Got Maddie Gilbert doing it on both sides of the disc now.
and slicing through. Cassidy finds Tower.
Western Washington now 2 points away from closing this game out. They've really taken control throughout this game. We talked about the first half really being the dominant part of the game, as our Live Ultimate ambassador Jesse Schaffner mentioned at halftime as well. It was really that first break to make it 3-1, and then the immediate hold to take that downwind point to 4-1, and it really hasn't been the same game ever since that moment.
So Western Washington within 2 of taking this game. They are the 2 seed in Pool C, and Tufts is the 4 seed. And you could really see that layout from Gilbert.
I think Gilbert wanted that the whole way there. She was ready and waiting for it, almost baiting it just a little bit, but an incredible athletic play. She can pull those kinds of plays off on both sides of the disc. And we've talked so much about Ismail in this game, but Gilbert has been an offensive and now also a defensive superstar for this Western Washington team.
And let's not forget that Gilbert is a Seattle Riot player too. They're only the reigning world champions, that's all. So Tufts on offense, really nice break around and continue. And looking up the line. And that was one where you saw Cam Russian cutting away from the disc. But if they had come underneath, that's a much easier throw to make.
Yeah, I think that they maybe just missed some of the communication with the thrower as well there. Unfortunately, we've seen a few miscommunications from Tufts, and that's played in the favor of Western Washington here.
Ismail throws the backhand. That is intercepted by Dunn. So Tufts on the goal line, and that is a score. Give it to Julia Lober.
And I mean, for Tufts, this game has really been about the second half for them. They have shown what they can do as a team. They've shown why they have taken top teams like Dartmouth Universe Point during their season. And unfortunately, that first half, the big difference in this game, but they're going to want to focus on all the positives they've been able to create in the second half going into their next games.
And considering how the first half was going with 6 consecutive points from Western Washington, Tufts, as you always want to end more stronger than you started, and they certainly can say that.
Yeah, we talk about nationals being a long tournament, especially with the heat, makes it feel even longer, but being able to build any kind of momentum going into your next games is incredibly important, and I think Tufts really has done a good job of that in the second half.
So got smiles on the sideline. As like we were saying earlier, this is the number 2 versus the number 4 in Pool C, with UC San Diego the 1st seed, 3rd seed overall.
Yeah, and Western Washington will have to move on to face UCSD in their next game later today, whereas Tufts will move on to face Georgia, who's seated only 1 spot ahead of them in the pool. And of course, we've talked about pre-quarters before, but finishing 2nd and 3rd in the pool gets you into that final bracket play, so Tufts will have their eye on that next game for sure.
So the pull goes out of bounds. You can see they brought in extra bleachers in the stadium where we are, and some tents on the hill slope. Expect a full house. Floating, and too far out.
Yeah, the wind carrying that one a little bit. Trying to track it down. We've seen Kamavangsa be so good in the air and as a receiver throughout this game as well. Not one of the players we've mentioned as much, but she's been consistent. So why not make that shot towards the back corner of the end zone? Unfortunately, again, the execution plaguing both of these teams, even with the lead here for Western Washington, so something they may want to be aware of and clean up going into their next games.
And the right idea, not the right execution. So Western Washington will take it at the front of the end zone. And quick around, they convert. Emma Lindsay gets the goal.
You can see Lindsay and Gilbert made a similar cut there. Lindsay coming from the back of the end zone though, and the defense not even ready for that cut to start. Western Washington make it game point here. They're at 14-9, and they look like they're confident. They look strong, and despite the execution errors, they have done a good job of controlling this game still.
So Western Washington coming. Oh, it was soft cap. So that is actually game, because soft cap went at 12 points. So Western Washington will take the game 14 over Tufts 9.
And lots of positives for both teams. I think they'll both be aware of the execution errors. Tufts, of course, as we mentioned, will be aware that that first half was the difference maker in the game. So they will be looking to start their next game way stronger than they did this one. And both of these teams, big games, a chance for big upsets coming up next.
So as far as our live stream goes, the next round actually turns over to the men's division, where we will see Brown versus North Carolina State. And then we'll go back to the women's division for Pitt versus Colorado, and then end the men's division, Cal Poly versus Colorado. But for now, for Becky Thompson, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald. So much great ultimate from both teams, grinding it out. Western Washington will take the game 14-9. We'll see you soon with a lot more ultimate here at the USA Ultimate Division I College Championships. This USA Ultimate live stream is produced by Fulcrum Media. We'll see you next time.